To a point, Councilman, I agree. The biggest hurdle we've been tackling is the late filing that, of course, is discovered. From my understanding, if it's after December, those are accurate ordinance charges. I'm not sure why this one is a year and a half late and being put on a roll. So we are still waiting for our prosecutor to give his opinion on what to do.
Okay.
As far as his suggestion to council.
Right. Okay.
I guess if you don't get a recommendation from him by tomorrow, we could postpone it.
We could. I'm not sure taxes have been paid or not. I'll push Dave for an answer. He's usually, I think he's in court Tuesday. So I'll try to get it.
I think the biggest thing is it's not our when you're buying something, it's your responsibility to do the research, you know, and that's what we've gone down this road before. So, you know, I'd be curious to hear what Dave said, but I think I know where I'm leaning.
Sheila, did you want to jump ahead to your items so Mr. Saph can?
Sure, I'm sure he would appreciate that.
You don't mind us?
No,
Thank you.
Not at all.
Which one is it?
We can do the tank policy first. Okay. This is the annual policy that we maintain for our above ground and underground fuel storage tanks.
Okay, I think it's 27. And this is, I know, something we get every year. Is there an increase over last year?
I'll let Mr. Saph talk about the renewal process and kind of the market so that you guys can understand.
Two things to keep in mind about this coverage. This is a statutory coverage. Much like as an employer, you're required to have workers' compensation. If you drive a vehicle, you're required to secure what are known as the Michigan no-fault coverages. In the case of an owner of an underground storage tank, you're required to demonstrate financial responsibility. And that is done, the state allows, in a number of different ways. And one of them is by procurement of insurance, which the city has historically done. There are other methods. You can do an annual filing by the strength of your audited financials. I have some community, a few communities that larger communities that do that, but again, most communities are purchasing a casualty, a liability policy that provides two coverages. One, protection against third-party damages. If there's a spill or release, you're protected against someone bringing a claim or an action against you. And then two, the second part is cleaning up the site itself. These are the two components that the state says that you must demonstrate that you either have the financial ability or you've transferred this exposure by insurance to somebody else. Just a brief side note on that, I am concerned about the age of the tanks at the fire station on E-Course. They're over 30 years of age. I was relieved that the renewal premium this year, and I'm sorry I didn't bring with me, Sheila, the details on that. I had the lease thing in my mind.
Yeah, it was 88 last year and it went up to 96 this year.
Okay, so you're seeing a gradual increase. I'm going to say that there are very, very few companies that will take on the risk because of the age of those tanks, and it's going to become more expensive to the point where you know, there may just be Lloyd's of London that will insure those tanks, and it may get to the point where no one will insure those tanks. But I was relieved again this year. I felt that we dodged a bullet, and you've got to be thinking about, in my opinion, or budgeting some kind of plan to address those tanks on E-Course, whether it be closing the tanks, emptying them, and then working something out with DEQ for a longer range plan, or biting the bullet and removing them and replacing them. But it's going to become more difficult from procuring that insurance in the traditional marketplace.
Steve, there's what has been your experience with the age from insurance companies that are, what years would you say do they insure
I've got a
for?
community here in Wayne County that 2 years ago, we ended up only with Lloyd's of London, and they non-renewed when the tanks were 35 years of age. Yeah, so you're getting close.
I'm not sure what that renewal cost was for Lloyd's of London, but it sounds really expensive.
It was
Sounds right up there with like Macy's and,
it's something you want to avoid, yeah.
we have had several meetings, and we're leaning the way of next year or this year into next year, phasing out of these and going the way of fleet cards. I don't think it pays to put new tanks in the ground in today's world we live in. We're looking at, we have talked about, Keith, we'll probably have to have one above ground for diesel fuel,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
But other than that, we would eventually get rid of all the other
We'll probably have
tanks.
two, one at the compost yard, one at the.
Yeah, you're right, I'm sorry, but they'd both be for diesel fuel.
Can you, like, Mr. Saph said, empty them and fill them up with concrete or something?
I don't know the procedure. We would empty them and begin the proper protocol to either secure them and phase them out, you know, I don't know if we have to do one per year, and I'm not quite sure what the cost will be. We haven't got that far yet in the analysis, but we'll definitely empty them and then cap them, and likely some strategy of, I don't think we'll have the ability to take them all out at one time, but we'll prioritize taking the ones out, you know, that need to come out soonest. I mean, the ones back here we'll probably want to do before we do the parking lot renovation, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to finish that and then rip them out after, so.
Have we ever had a claim on this insurance?
You have not, and I'll be very frank, this is a difficult policy to make a claim under. A spill is defined as an actual event or an incident. With underground tank, that's hard to come across. So we've had situations where people remove a tank and they find pollution, and because of the removal process, the insurance company says, well, you intended to remove that tank, so you're responsible for the cleanup at that time. So it's a very narrow field. It's a tough policy to make a claim against, but again, you're obligated by the state. And you'll need to deal with the MDEQ and the reporting provisions as you close the tank and go forward. But even if it takes time and you become in a position with them where they're asking information, it's unlikely you're going to sell that fire hall on e-course. And that's what you don't really have to worry about, is if you're going to sell that property to a third party for somebody else's future use. But the DEQ will be involved, or you want to be monitoring the process as you go through that. That's standard.
And then, sure, I mean, just from our perspective, the liabilities are just something we want to get them out of the ground. I mean, you don't want them in there, you know, they as long as they're in the ground, there's some exposure, we would likely try to move as quick as we possibly could to get them out. You know, we did the one at the FIA building, was it 2 years ago? I don't think it was that expensive. I think the total cost was under 20 grand to take it out. Yeah, I don't think it was terribly expensive.
The expense comes in is if, when they're removing it, they do find contamination, then the DEQ makes you monitor for a period of time, and you have to go through a lengthy process there. That's where the expense comes in.
How big are these things? How many gallons?
They range from, I think, 10,000 to 20,000. You got some big tanks. Yeah. And you know, back in the 70s and 80s, that's what the concern was when. I think most of us are old enough to remember the lines waiting for gasoline.
I don't remember that.
So as part of the renewal process, next year we'll definitely be revisiting some of these topics for discussion, and obviously, putting that plan together. And, there is a reporting requirement that would be part of the renewal process for next year. But for this year, it is a little bit up, but not,
Considering the age of the tanks, I'm
pretty conservative increase.
I'll have to speak on the next one. Okay, do you have any more questions on 27? Let's go to 28 then.